Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you who decided to give me an hour of your day because I know just how valuable the most precious commodity is, which is time. Because once you spend it up, you can never get it back again. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me on all of the platforms, be it Twitter, be it Rumble, Odyssey, Twitch, the Red Pill Journals, which is the sister channel, and the Red Pill Diaries. Thank each and every one of you all as we talk on today's show, Reading Between the Lines. Now, before we go into the show, I would like to ask each and every one of you to please go and subscribe to the Red Pill Diaries on Twitter, on Locals, which is the empowerment of truth locals.com, our other platforms, Odyssey and Twitch, and our backup channel on YouTube, which is the Red Pill Journals. I mean, it'll take you a few seconds out of your day. I'm asking you that. Now, the show is titled Reading Between the Lines, and the reason I labeled the show Reading Between the Lines is because when we're looking at the politics of America, I'm talking about domestic, and when we're looking at the politics of America globally and the Western world, and even just say the world in general, a lot of the time when they're talking to you, believe that they're talking to you, they're actually talking to their colleagues and they're talking over your head. That is why we emphasize so much on these platforms here the understanding of words. That's why we always go into definitions so that there will be no mistake of shades of meaning, of purposes of what they're trying to convey to the people. This is how the elite, this is how those in power stay in power, because they send out coded messages to their colleagues and their friends. They send out coded warnings. Look what happens in Congress. Now Congress is there and it's supposed to be regulating trade. It's supposed to be regulating commerce. It's supposed to be regulating the stock market and watching for corruption. And the presidential administration is supposed to do the same thing. But yet, right before a crash happens, those who are heavily invested in certain companies like Boeing's and all of these weapons manufacturers or drug manufacturers or healthcare services, you'll notice that these Congress people, when they get to Congress, they'll be worth $100,000, $200,000. And after being in Congress, they are worth 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 million because they have insider information. So before a trade happens, they know, or they get the tips on it, or before a crash happens. And so they talk to their colleagues like that to keep them empowered, to keep them wealthy, to try to help them when things are not going good. So what we do on this platform is to empower you by giving you an understanding of definitions so that when you're looking at the sentences and when you're looking at the reports and when you're looking at the articles, you can read between the lines with a high level of certainty about what you feel is going on. Okay? That is one of the main reasons why. Now, I want to direct your attention to something. Let's go to something real quick. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick. All right. We know that America continues to wage war against China. We know that economically. We see what's going on in the Middle East, which we'll talk about that. We see what's going on in Africa, which I'm going to do a specific video about that, what's going on that is not in the headlines of the West. And it is major what is going on in Africa. And I believe that this is purposely done by the Western media to keep you blind to the reality of what is taking place in Africa. There's tectonic shifts politically and geopolitically that are going on that has the ability to change the paradigm that is already changing, if you understand. And they don't want you to see that. They don't want you to understand the significance of all of these events that are taking place. So again, they speak at you when you think they're speaking to you, but behind you, they're speaking to that person. Okay, so we're going to catch all of it, and we're going to talk about it. So on Patreon, I did an article, and for my patrons, you know, and I talked about what just transpired with China and with the United States, and I let people know that a major event took place that was unreported in the West, and this major event has global ramifications. Global ramifications. And so I haven't heard any alternative media mention it. I haven't heard them speak on what just transpired. Okay? Because all we heard was about Moody's, you know, the credit rating agencies downgrading China's credit rating to a negative outlook. That's all we heard. And they start pointing to some little flimsy things that they can downgrade anybody with, right? We saw that, but we didn't know what preceded that, and we didn't understand what just happened right after that. In the Western media and some of the so-called alternative media, they're purposely omitting these things and yet claiming to be for your best interest. Now, what am I talking about? Well, on December 1st, China, there was an act or an order or a law that went into effect in China, right? And this law affects graphite. Boom. Let me tell you what that is. Okay. That is one of the most sought out elements or materials on the planet. It is used in everything from pencils to electronics, right? And China has a grip on rare earth and rare elements, right? They have like a 92 to 95% stranglehold on rare earths and rare elements that everybody has to come to China for. Okay, this is one of the reasons why the United States keeps pressuring North Korea, which maybe we'll talk about that also. Okay, because it's way more than what you think. So this law went into effect. Prior to the law going into effect, did you notice that there were a lot of trips made by the U.S. Treasury Secretary and other U.S. Cabinet members to China to speak with or to meet with important Chinese figures? What they were trying to do is dissuade the Chinese from letting that law go into effect. But the law that went into effect is a blowback from the United States openly trying to keep advanced equipment and advanced technology out of China's hand when it comes to the manufacturing of microchips and stuff. So China had enough of it, and they said that they would strike back. And what they struck back with is with the graphite or graphene law, okay? And so after this law took effect, and America saw that China would not budge, Moody's downgraded China's economic outlook. Moody's. Now, I want you to understand something, the significance of that, okay? Because we're reading between the lines, okay? I want you to understand the significance of this. And again, I give a shout out to everybody who's watching from every one of the platforms. Thank you so much. Your time is valuable, and thank you so much. But look, so as I was saying, the blowback effect of America's trying to sanction China and trying to keep advanced chip technology and advanced what are those machines that are used to make advanced chips out of China's hand. China implemented this law, right? And again, when this law took effect and the United States saw that China was not going back on it, these are some of the events that took place. And tell me whether or not these are coincidences. The United States upped the ante in the South China Sea by infringing upon China's territorial water rights and sending a warship in China's territorial waters. They also have signed agreements and publicly announced that they will start deploying mid-range nuclear-capable ballistic missiles to the Asia-Pacific region. And they are trying to force the Philippines to escalate tensions with China over disputed territories, right? All of this takes place. And remember, Moody's downgrading of China's economic outlook. All of this took place right after the graphene or graphite law went into effect. What are the chances of that? Do you understand how major this is? Because this is an element that the United States needs and all of the Western world needs. You understand? And on top of that, let me give you something. Where is it at? Is it on this one or is it on that one? Let's see. Oh, okay. Also, here's another thing before I go to what I'm saying. Do you know this also affects electrical vehicles? Because without Chinese graphite, you can't make a workable electrical vehicle, or you can't repair it, or you can't sustain it, or you can't upgrade it. You understand? And all of this is because America is continuing with her hegemonic ways of antagonizing people. Now, I want to put some on your mind before I go further. I want you to think of the significance of this and tell me whether or not the United States is exercising her unsaid power and hold over international organizations and institutions by the downgrading of China's economic outlook by using Moody's. Okay. Remember, China has its own credit rating agency now. Remember that also. All right. So I want you to understand that. So what Moody's says does not mean anything to China, because before all of this took place, China was putting all of the chips in place that they knew that they would need to continue. And what is the significance about the United States doing what it did and the Moody's downgrading of China's economy? It was to make investors' capital take flight out of China, to destabilize the Chinese economy, and to throw the Chinese leadership off balance and have them preoccupied with trying to contain an economic crisis through capital flight. You understand? Have you heard any alternative media tell you anything about this? Have you heard them speak anything on this? Why? The question is, why? All right. So, again, all of this takes place not in a vacuum, but while a whole bunch of things are underway. So let me go to something real quick. All right. Because I have so many articles that I saved. I haven't read them. I just saved them because I want to read them with you. So when we read them together for the first time, like if there's a eye-catching article, I'll save it. Or if I'm reading an article, I'll let you know, hey, I've read that article or something like that. I was reading it the other day or something like that. So I'll do that to inform you. But here we are right here. Here it is. This is what I was trying to get to, one of these articles right here. So this is what Lavrov said on November 27th. Remember, we read part of this on one of the previous shows. And this is major because it has everything to do with America's covert acts of war against China to destabilize the economy. And you'll see it when I bring up something else, okay? The article is titled, U.S. Weaponizing Dollar for Global Trade Wars. That's what Sergei Lavrov, foreign minister of the Russian Federation, stated. That's the headline. And the article reads like this. Let me get a drink of water real quick. That medicine has my mouth dry. It says, the U.S. is using the dollar to unleash trade wars worldwide. Why? While international economic cooperation is also being weaponized. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Monday. Now, it's something to this paragraph that we're going to revisit in just a second. And we're going to revisit it with hopefully I have this old clip that I played on here before, because I do have that old clip. I just looked on my dashboard. I do have it because it plays right in line with this. Okay, we're going to reread that paragraph in just a second, but we'll go to the next one. The U.S. and its allies in the EU are using a wide range of geopolitical engineering tools, which include, among other things, unleashing trade and economic wars, Lavrov told Primakov Readings International Forum. Now, it says the activities of the World Trade Organization, or the WTO, primarily for settling disputes, have been blocked by Western countries. Such fundamental legal foundations of world economic relations as free competition and the immunity of property have been destroyed. Now stop right there. Right there. There's something very important of what Lavrov is trying to get to. He is telling you that the United States and its Western partners are now trying to destroy everything if they cannot rule. What did I tell you all? The mindset of the Western world is, if I can't rule, I'm killing everybody. I'm going to war. Isn't that psychotic? But this is the state of mind of the leadership. And it permeates throughout government, throughout U.S. government, throughout British government, throughout Western government. You may have a cooler head here, a cooler head, but it is pervasive. Because if it were not pervasive among the leadership of the Western world, then it would not become uniform policy, right? So let's go back and we're going to visit that first paragraph. Man, I didn't even know I was going to say this about this first paragraph. See, we learned together. The U.S. is using the dollar to unleash trade wars worldwide, while international economic cooperation is being weaponized. Oh, if you support Iran, I'm going to sanction you. If you support Venezuela, I'm going to sanction you. If you support Russia, I'm going to sanction you. If you support China, I'm going to sanction you. We are going to China to demand that China put a halt to giving Russia weapons. We're going to go to Iran and we're going to tell them that they better stop helping Russia with these drones. And yet, at every turn, they brag about the weapons they send to Ukraine, the weapons that they are arming NATO with, the weapons that they continue to give to Israel to pummel and destroy Palestine. If you get a rock, it must be to their satisfaction on how you use the rock when you throw it. But they can have nuclear weapons. Isn't that something? We're concerned about Iran's nuclear weapons, but we're not concerned about the nation that has the second largest nuclear stockpile that has actually used it on multiple occasions. Exceptionalism. Sociopathic. Psychotic. All right? So, that article one more time, and we're going to play this clip, but it will only play, as I said, the first 2 or 3 minutes of it. It's a 7-minute clip, but we're going to get to something on why they are doing that. And with China in mind, remember, we're talking about Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of the Russian Federation. But what he's saying is pertinent to the point that we're trying to make and show you about why they are so desperately trying to destabilize China. Okay. So again, let's read it. The U.S. is using the dollar to unleash trade wars worldwide, while international economic cooperation is being weaponized, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Monday. Now listen to this clip here. Some of you who've been with me a while, you'll be familiar with this clip, but it goes right to what we were just talking about with the Moody's downgrading, the military provocations in the South China Sea and all around the bases of China. And it goes right to the heart of things about how the U.S. is trying to weaponize the dollar even more as the dollar continues its downward spiral globally. Okay? Listen close to this right here. Let's see if we can get it up.
Welcome back. More warnings this morning coming out about doing business with China as Xi Jinping moves to make China the #1 economic superpower and overtake the United States. I spoke with Texas Congressman Michael McCall, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. We spoke about here at the Milken Institute. I want to ask you about China, because now the Chinese Communist Party has been able to get the Saudis to transact in the Chinese yuan. Are you worried about the dollar losing its reserve status?
Well, not so much. What I don't like, all of a sudden they're the peace broker. You know, they show up at the 11th hour. We're not there, right? When we don't lead, China fills the void. So they negotiate this peace settlement between the Saudis and Iran. And all it really means is they can have embassies in their respective countries. But they're doing it. Macron went to visit Chairman Xi in Beijing when I was in Taipei. What I do worry about the dollar is in the Belt and Road Initiative, that's their jet trap. You have to sign a contract saying, I'm going to sign up for the digital yuan. What China wants long term is for the digital yuan to be the global currency and not the U.S. dollar.
That's incredible. Tell me about that as it relates to surveillance, because I know that right now Ron DeSantis in Florida is pushing back on a digital dollar from the central bank because he feels that there's surveillance threats.
Well, I mean, some would argue we have to get, we got to compete with the digital dollar versus the digital yuan that China's on. China's in 140 different countries, Belt and Road. Each of those countries have signed up for the digital yuan. You do the math. Eventually, their goal is that the dollar is going to be the second-rate currency, and it will be the digital yuan. So we got to be this is a great power competition we're in.
This is an incredible story right here, and really an incredible development, in my view.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
I agree, and it's not talked about very often, but they want to dominate everything. It's not just military, it's economic. And they want to have the global currency, that being the digital yuan, and they're well on their way to doing that now.
And they made sure you and your colleagues.
Oh, you hear? It's incredible. They want to dominate everything. Well, hold on. Stop. Is that not projection? Why is America stating that her interests are in the Middle East? She wants to dominate there. Why is she stating that her interests are in South America, in the Caribbean? Because she wants to dominate there. Why in Europe? Because she wants to dominate there. Or Eurasia? She wants to dominate there. Asia? She wants to dominate there. And what is she fighting like mad for? Stoking tensions with these constant military provocations and these economic attacks on all of these nations that dare to assert their sovereignty. It's because she wants the dollar to remain the world's reserve currency. So while she's attacking China, because she sees China as the primary threat to unseat her, she refuses to take the curtain off the mirror and look herself in the mirror. This is imperial hubris. This is what I'm telling you. And it is so deeply ingrained in American politics that it is unbelievable. And we say nothing about it. So again, he's concerned about the Belt and Road Initiative. Why? Because it gives aid to countries, not in dollars, but in yuans. And it frees them of the bonds or the shackles of Western servitude. Because if you get a loan from the IMF, you've got to destroy all of this aid that you help your own civilization, your own society with. You've got to prioritize corporate interests. You've got to prioritize Western capitalistic interests, and you've got to be a predator, right, against your own people. But with China offers these loans, or these interest-free loans, or these low interest loans, or these long loans, which means like 10, 20 years down the line, right? And America can't compete with that. And it is killing her that she can't compete with that. I'm telling you this, all right? So on top of that, he mentioned that China is in 140 countries, and her goal is to what? What is the goal, according to him? It's to unseat the dollar and make the yuan the number one currency. Now, America has no problem with the dollar being the number one currency. America has no problem being the so-called indispensable exceptional nation. She has no problem being the premier power, the preeminent power, the number one without rival power. But she has a problem if somebody else is. Hypocrisy. Hypocrisy, right? Is that not right? So when he said one, and I'm going to look in the chat in a minute, okay? I'm going to look at the chat on locals. I'm saying locals on Rumble and YouTube in just a second. But here's an article by Watcher.guru. All right, Watcher.guru, and the title of the article, and it came out December 4th of this year, is this right here. BRICS, that's the acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, right? BRICS, 150 countries to pay Chinese yuan, not US dollar, for loan repayment. That is the main issue that she's having, because she's losing her footing economically. And if the dollar is no longer the preeminent currency of the world, or the currency of choice for nations around the world, she cannot do this deficit spending. She cannot export inflation to live in luxury. She cannot mess with the interest rates and cause the overthrow of nations around the globe. She can't do that. And that senator or that congressman made it very clear when he said, matter of fact, let me play part of that clip again to let you hear something that he said that you should let it marinate in your mind, and we're going to come back to this article. Listen to this again.
Welcome back. More warnings this morning coming out about doing business with China as Xi Jinping moves to make China the #1 economic superpower and overtake the United States. I spoke with Texas Congressman Michael McCall, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. We spoke here at the Milken Institute. I want to ask you about China, because now the Chinese Communist Party has been able to get the Saudis to transact in the Chinese yuan. Are you worried about the dollar losing its reserve status?
Well, not so much that. What I don't like, all of a sudden they're the peace broker. You know, they show up at the 11th hour. We're not there, right? When we don't lead, China fills the void. So they negotiate this peace settlement between the Saudis and Iran. And all it really means is they can have embassies in their respective countries. But they're doing it. Macron went to visit Chairman Xi in Beijing when I was in Taipei. What I do worry about the dollar is in the Belt and Road Initiative, that's their debt trap. You have to sign a contract saying, I'm going to sign up for the digital yuan. What China wants long term is for the digital yuan to be the global currency and not the U.S. dollar.
That's incredible. Tell me about that as it relates to surveillance, because I know that right now Ron DeSantis in Florida is pushing back on a digital dollar from the central bank because he feels that there's surveillance threats.
Well, I mean, some would argue
So listen, and there was a clip I also had, but I removed it from my dashboard because I was removing a lot of old clips. And I don't know if it was DeSantis or one of the other congressmen stated openly that if China replaces the dollar with these countries, and these countries are doing bilateral currency swap agreements, trade agreements outside of the dollar and using the yuan and their own national currencies, then it limits America's power and ability to project power. They let the cat out of the bag. So if I'm not using the dollar, you have no instruments to monitor what is going in and coming out of my country. You have no influence on the domestic or the international policy that my government or my nation sets. This is a problem with America because she wants to be in everybody's business all the time, dictating to everybody to mold and fashion them in her image and in her likeness. See, she believes that she's the God. That's what that is. And that's how God acts, right? What does it say? He made man in his image and in his likeness, right? So what do we see the Western world doing? You must be a democracy. You must be like our democracy. You must do this and you must do that. They want to force you and mold you into what they think is best for you and what they think you should do and how you should act and how you should govern. Forget the thousands of years of history that your culture might have had or your nation might have had. Forget that. I know best. I'm America. I know best. I'm Britain. I know best. I'm the European Union. We're going to fashion and mold you into our image and our likeness. And if you refuse that, we'll demonize you. We'll assassinate some of you. We'll overthrow some of you. We'll sanction you. And eventually, if you keep on, we'll wage war on you and bum you back to the Stone Age, a la Libya. Right? Is that not right? So, in this article, let's read this article together. This is a short one. Let me go to it real quick. Excuse me. About this 150 plus countries, because the article says 150, but while the video was going on, I was just scrolling and it said 155, but the title says 150. So we'll go into it. It says BRICS member China could use the Belt and Road Initiative, or the BRI, to advance the Chinese yuan and diminish the US dollar. For the uninitiated, China launched the Belt and Road Initiative in 2013 and provides loans to developing countries to build seaports, infrastructural projects, railroads, among other things. China finances developmental projects worldwide by releasing huge loans to Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and several African countries. Stop right there. And they forgot to put in there some European countries and some Latin American countries. It's not just Pakistan and Sri Lanka and some African countries. Hell, Britain is a member of that, and they issued at one time yuan denominated bonds. Go look it up. Russia has issued yuan denominated bonds. As a matter of fact, the Russian central bank and the Russian government said that they are close to removing the dollar out of their reserve currency, and they have a 75% holding of yuan now. Could this be the reason that America is pushing for war with China? She knows that she can't win, but what other options does she have? Okay, the article goes on and says, a total of 155 countries have signed the Belt and Road Initiative with China and received funds for developmental projects. However, reports indicate that BRICS member China could soon use the BRI initiative to further the Chinese yuan's usage by putting it ahead of the US dollar for global trade. You understand that? This is what has the White House panicked. That's why in recent weeks you saw all of these ambassadors or US emissaries over in Asia trying to cower China, trying to persuade China, trying to threaten China. And it's summed up with Moody's downgrading China's economic outlook. And it also ended up with the provocations in the South China Sea. That's what's going on between the lines. Let me look in the chat. I don't want to ignore anybody in the chat. Shout out to Holly. Holly Horn is in the building. Joel, shout out to Joel. Net Rando, shout out. So yeah, that rules-based order is something else in itself, isn't it? The rules-based international order. The rules based upon whatever America and the Western world dictates. They don't confine themselves to those rules. Like when it concerns NATO putting bases in Ukraine and Russia warning over a period of years and years, don't do this. This is a direct threat to our national security. So when Russia was forced to go in, this was an unprovoked attack. And yet America is screaming about Iran doing trade with Venezuela, which is 1,000 miles away from the United States. They're screaming about Russia probably returning to Cuba in a military capacity greater than during the Cold War. They're screaming about how Russia and China are trying to make inroads into Latin America. And yet you see no problem with you stationing cruise missiles and radars and warships and warplanes close to Russia's borders. Hubris. Imperial hubris. That exceptionalism, right? That's what it is. So, and Holly hit it right. Let me see if I can highlight this real quick. I gotta highlight this. I see you, Thanator. I'm gonna put your comment up in a second too. Holly says China builds roads, U.S. gives lectures. Mic drop moment. Boom. I would say so, right? Yeah, Joel, I'm gonna come back to yours because I want to put yours in perspective and address it. Let me go back to Thanatar 13. I think that's how you say it. Salute to you. Good riddance to the dollar. The nightmare of Western imperialism is finally nearing its end. I bear witness to that, right? Joel says, I'm highlighting Joel right now. The thought of America losing power will give them a heart attack. That's what you're watching right now. Listen, have you ever wondered why America and Great Britain and the European Union continues to do things that are detrimental, wind up being detrimental to their own interests and to their own sovereignty and to their own cause? Have you ever wondered that? It's because when you become desperate, you don't think clearly, right? Anything that comes up that may seem rational, you go for it because you're trying to stem the tide. You're trying to stop the momentum that is swinging against you. So you're doing everything. And when things are not working and you've tried and you've tried and tried and tried, what you say, well, I only have these levers left, so let me use them. And when you use them up and you can't do anything else, what happens? You go for a Hail Mary, right? And like boxing or so, you'll see a young fighter come up fighting the old fighter who was the champion, who looked unbeatable. And this young specimen, ripped, has a chin of granite, has a fist of stone, and he's coming at you round after round. Whatever you're hitting him with, he's hitting you with 3 or 4 times as much. And each punch is 10 times harder. So after a couple rounds, you start, oh man, the stuff that I used to do, I can't do. So now you drop the hands down a little bit because those ribs are getting sore. This is what America's doing. So she's dropping her guard down, thinking that she has her guard up, right? And so she's trying everything, and she's almost at that point. Well, she's discussing with her corner men being the European Union and the UK. Man, I might have to go for a Hail Mary to keep this going. I might have to go for a Hail Mary because if we go into the latter rounds, he might knock me out because I'm not affecting him. But every punch he throws at me is affecting me. This is the situation that America now finds herself in with Russia, with China, with Iran, with the global South. I think that is an apt explanation and example of the situation that America now finds herself in. I do believe so. So let's go to something else right along this line. Where is it? So on November 27th, this article came up. It says, investors speed up dollar liquidation. I'm going to say that again. Investors speed up dollar liquidation. And it comes courtesy of the Financial Times, okay? And it says, and this is very important, right? Because, well, we'll talk on the back end of this, okay, about that. But this is very important. Let me read a little bit of it for you. It says, asset managers have been selling their positions at the fastest pace in a year this month, the outlet says. Investors are selling U.S. dollar positions at the fastest rate in a year as they expect lower rates next year after the U.S. Federal Reserve ends its aggressive campaign of interest rates hikes. Now, what that shows us is that on one hand, people want to believe something that is not true. And on the other hand, they want to ignore the reality of the situation. So we see people on the one hand, they're getting out of their dollar assets or liquidating, let's use the word, liquidating their dollars for a minute, right? They're expecting the Fed to have more tools to keep the economy going. But I want to propose something to you all. This goes back to something that I was going to say at the beginning of the show that I told you I was going to say right now, and this is the apt moment for it. With Moody's downgrading of China and the Chinese economy to a negative outlook, right? And they give these frivolous statements about why they did it. And we know that it was to cause investors' flight, to take their capital, to force investors to take their capital out of the Chinese economy, to cause turmoil in it, right? Now, we've established that Moody's downgraded China's economy to a negative outlook. Now, let us use common sense for a minute. If Holly downgrades my creditworthiness to a negative outlook, but Joel owes me a whole lot of money, why isn't Holly attacking Joel just as much as me? If Joel depends on me for 93 to 95% of all Joel's goods, right? And Joel owes me between 1.2 and 1.6 trillion dollars. Why is Holly so concerned about me? Do we understand the laws of nature? The first law of nature is what? Self-preservation. So what Holly didn't take in consideration is that before I allow my economy to collapse, I'll call the debt end that Joel owes me. So I should really be attacking Joel because Joel has nothing. Joel owes me everything. So why is Moody's so concerned? And remember this, I want to refresh your memory for a minute because I have a longer memory when it comes to stuff like this. Just a couple of months ago, as even a month and a half ago, the IMF, the World Bank, and other institutions were saying that China has now become the what? The center of the global economy. China would be the only economy with growth, right? Isn't that what they were saying? Now, if you put a negative outlook on the center of global economics, and the only country that you stated would have positive growth, then what does that say for everybody else? Especially that nation that owes China 1.2 to 1.6 trillion dollars. Huh? Do you see? They don't examine these things because these are political games that they're playing to try to outmaneuver China and outmaneuver everybody that they think may have a chance to rise up out of the grips of Western imperialism. So they use these institutions that were set up by imperialistic, colonialistic countries, and then they ignore them when it comes to themselves. To give you an example, as a matter of fact, let me go back to something real quick, and we'll connect it all together since we're on this. Let me scroll down a second. Go to something. All right. Now, you hear from time to time the UK, the US, and European nations scream about the International Criminal Court, right? To bring charges against anybody, even non-signatures of the court, like they tried to do with Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, right? And all of them were fine and good with that. And they talked about the jurisdiction of the so-called International Criminal Court, which happens to reside in a former colonial country that killed tens of millions of people now, that has never paid the price for that, right? So that International Criminal Court there has jurisdiction over anything that the Western world says, right? And Now Kenya, an African country, wants to bring British soldiers who committed injustice to justice. And the British government says, no. That doesn't apply to us. No. Do you see the hypocrisy? Matter of fact, let me play a clip for you. Okay. What I want to point out to you is this is why the Western world is collapsing, because they are hypocrites. They are arrogant. They're corrupt. They're racist. They're fascist leaders who are hell-bent on maintaining and gaining power at all costs, even at the expense of the population of the planet Earth. I want you to just listen to this, okay?
Kenya's courts don't have jurisdiction to judge British soldiers. That is the position of a UK colonel whose troops have been charged with killing a young Kenyan woman back in 2012.
Right there, we'll play it again. So, listen to this. I want you to understand the dynamics of what was just said. British troops in Kenya, okay, in Kenya, not in Britain, but in Kenya, committed murder. And the Kenyan courts wanted to try the British soldiers for the murder. But Britain says, no, that doesn't apply to us. No. But at the same time screaming about Vladimir Putin being brought before the International Criminal Court. Make that make sense. Make it make sense. African nations don't have a right to issue judgments that correct wrongs. But European nations do? How is that just? How? Again, let's look at this real quick.
Kenya's courts don't have jurisdiction to judge British soldiers. That is the position of a UK colonel whose troops have been charged with killing a young Kenyan woman back in 2012.
The UK government, as a foreign sovereign state, does not consent to submit to the jurisdiction of this court and to be impleaded in the present proceedings.
The officer's comments came after a Kenyan court reopened a probe into the murder of Agnes Wanjiru, whose body was found in a hotel septic tank 2 months after she disappeared. Agnes was allegedly last seen in the company of a UK soldier. The British Army Training Unit has been stationed in Kenya under a bilateral agreement since 1964. Local prosecutors want several suspects extradited to stand trial in Kenya, something London has so far rejected. Amid the deadlock, a Nairobi court has decided to adjourn the trial until May. The victim's family say they're distraught.
Whenever I see the British Army, I'm filled with grief because justice has not been served for our late sister, and yet the soldiers keep on training here in Kenya. Seeing them brings back some bad memories. I wouldn't want the base to be closed or have them stopped from training here because it was one person who caused the problem, not all of them. We have locals working there in the army base. If they're kicked out, it will mean job losses.
Well, we spoke with Kenyan High Court advocate Mbiu Kamu, who represents the killed woman's family. He claims officials are trying to sweep her murder under the rug.
We believe there are no investigations which are going on. Investigations are going on is to cover up the incident and make people lose memory and forget there was a lady called Agnes Wanjiru. So we look up at this as a lack of respect for the laws of Kenya and the people of Kenya. On the issue of why the Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya is reluctant to take action against the perpetrators, which is wrong, because the AG is under legal duty to protect the interests of Kenyan citizens.
So, you see what I'm pointing out there is the hypocrisy. And I saw my guy in the chat. I got to give a shout out to Mehdi. Mehdi is in the building. I want to go back, and I saw what you said, Joel, about Holly, and I laughed about that too during the when you said at Rashid Holly's committing suicide. I understood what you were talking about. But again, the hypocrisy of a nation. And I detoured to just show you those things. This is not just one off. This is all the time. All the time. And so when we go back to this subject about the dollar dime and the constant provocations, and then we look at what America just did. She just signed a deal with, what was it, Finland or Sweden or one of them, where she now has access to at least seven military bases. See, what did I tell you all? The empire, even when they have so-called allies, because it's parasitic, it has to leech onto a body. And now it is leached on to the military facilities of, I think, Finland or Sweden. I can't remember which one it is, right? And this is a provocation because that's not too far from Russia. But here's something that we got to look at. The reason that the military is doing this is because the dollar is being removed as the global currency. We saw and we heard congressmen talking about the situation and how they view China and how China is moving towards internationalizing the yuan. And we've read the articles and stuff. Do you understand, as I keep telling you, that America and the Western world needs war? They need debt. See, if you wage war, you can have employment for certain portions of your society. You can enrich the military-industrial complex, right? You need it, especially when you don't produce anything viable anymore. You need debt. As a matter of fact, I was talking to you all on the last show, not day before yesterday, and I was telling you about how the Western world is a parasite and how the system needs debt or it dies. And I was telling you about some of my interactions with some of the economists and some of the investors and what they were saying. So give me a second, and I'm going to pull up something for you all. Give me one second. I'm going to pull it up on this one. So, and I want you to understand, it may be a little slow for a second. We're experiencing some, I don't know what's going on outside, but I got a notice from the internet service that said that they're working on stuff, I guess, down the street or whatever. So it may pause a little bit or it may freeze up for a second, but don't go anywhere, okay? I should have said that at the beginning of the show. But I want to bring something to light for you all. Let me see which one it is. I think it's that one. Let me go here. Give me a second. Where is it? Let's see which one it is. I'm trying to figure out which one it is. Hold on. I think that one's the one. Okay. It should be up on the screen. Or it might take a second for it to get up on the screen. Okay. You see the videos right here, okay? On the videos of this channel, the Red Pill Diaries, okay? Now, I want you to pay close attention to something, all right? Because this is very important.
Saving over $350,000 in potential taxes sound good to you in retirement? I'm going to show you how quickly we can get that.
We'll skip the commercial.
And it was taken over by the central banks, who now can just add digits to a screen, or before they were able to do that, just print it out of thin air. Central banks produce debt. That's all they produce. They don't produce anything else. They manipulate and play with debt. That's all they do. The dollars things with the pieces of paper with numbers printed on them. Okay, we work for the privilege to borrow these bills, just like our nation does, from the central bank or from wherever else they're going to borrow these from. Like the Treasury. The Treasury here sells. How does it work? The U.S. Treasury has to sell debt in order to fund itself. But who's the number one buyer of U.S. debt? The Federal Reserve. Okay, everyone knows this. But again, central banks produce one product, and that product is debt. The bills that we work for are not ours. We don't own them. They're owned by the issuing central bank, in this case, the Federal Reserve, and they're owed back to the issuing central bank, in this case, the Federal Reserve, plus interest they create out of nothing. It's amazing. So these are not units of wealth. These are not backed by anything. They're units of debt. They're IOUs. All those bills in your pocket and the zeros that you think are in your bank account, they're not yours. You work for the privilege to borrow them. That is all. People think it's theirs, but it's not. And that's how the debt-based economic model works. And the debt, in order to function, in order for the system to function, even at its current level, the debt must exponentially be increased. This is what creates inflation here. Henceforth, why, since the inception of the Federal Reserve, the U.S. dollar has now lost 98% of its purchasing power. 98, and they want it all. I mean, central banks collectively, I've been telling people this for 10 years, they're in a race to the bottom. They're trying to see who can devalue their currency faster. Again, because where does the central bank's power reside? We covered it already. In one thing, its ability to inflate or its ability to issue debt. We take that away, central banking system dies. If we can kill one central bank, just one, we will start a domino effect and they'll all start to die. Why do you think, for example, there was this big debate during the debt ceiling? Oh, we got to raise it. Oh, we got to raise it. And you had Janet Yellen with that face. This is Janet Yellen's face. Imagine me with a bowl haircut. This is what she looks like to me. So you got, she's practically on her knees. Oh, please, we got to do, because she knew if we did not raise the debt ceiling, and the Federal Reserve would have started to die. And then that would have started, and within a matter of months, although it would have hurt the economy at first, it would have hurt the economy bad because we're still locked into this debt-based system. We would have had what's called a credit freeze. It would have locked up, no transactions. It would have been pretty traumatic, but then we could have built ourselves up out of it and we could have killed the world central bank.
So, as I told you all, this thing is spiraling out of control for the Western world. They are parasitic. The nations, the system itself is parasitic. How can you develop and maintain that development when your development is on the back of others, or causing misery, causing destruction of others, right? So you need to pillage, plunder, and destroy and occupy so that you can live a life. And soon as other centers of power that are outside your control comes along, they become a threat. Why? Why are they a threat to you? They're not asking, they're not trying to demand that you do something. They're saying, listen, let's work together. But working together means that you don't get everything you want and I don't get everything I want. We'll negotiate what's beneficial and what's my red lines and what's beneficial and what's your red lines, and then we'll work from that point. But no, it's all or nothing with America. You see it with her allies and enemies alike. It's all or nothing. If you think, and they know that things are falling apart. They know them. They know that these things are falling apart. Matter of fact, here's a clip. I want you to listen to this clip. I think this is the FBI director. Okay, this is about 53 seconds or 40 some seconds. All right. And I want you to listen to this. They are talking about domestic threats and they're talking about threats everywhere. They are so fearful. This is why the policies are irrational. This is why the politicians continue to be irrational and detached from reality. And this is why they continue to steer America over the economic, political, and geopolitical, and also cultural and technological cliffs. This is why. And the fear of the blowback. Remember when I told you that science dictates to us, not Rashid, not the Red Pill Diaries, not you, but science dictates that for every action, there must be an equal or greater reaction. And so they are feeling and they're fearing the blowback of the reactions of imperialism. You understand what I'm saying? They are fearful of the fact that as thou hast done, it is now time to be done unto thee. You understand? And no matter how much she puts this baloney before your face talking about she's exceptional, she cannot negate the laws of science. They cannot negate the laws of science. All right? Listen to the fear right here.
So what I would say that is unique about the environment that we're in right now in my career is that while there may have been times over the years where individual threats could have been higher here or there than where they might be right now, I've never seen a time where all the threats, or so many of the threats, are all elevated all at exactly the same time. That's what makes this environment that we're in now so fraught, and why funding our men and women who are working shoulder to shoulder with state and local law enforcement and other partners every day makes it even more important, not less.
So, blinking red lights analogy about 9/11, all the lights were blinking red before 9/11. Apparently, obviously, all of us missed it. Would you say that there's multiple blinking red lights out there?
I see blinking lights everywhere I turn.
You heard that? I see blinking lights everywhere I turn. And one of those blinking lights is America being displaced as the preeminent economic, political, and geopolitical power. That is what is going on. And they see China as the greatest threat to American hegemony. Why? Why won't they see Russia? Because Russia has the largest nuclear stockpile in the world. Why don't they see Russia as that? Huh? Because they believe that they can maneuver and pacify Russia, even though they're sadly mistaken. They believe that they can pacify Russia with promises, more promises, and this and that. But what has them disturbed is that China is a non-white, non-Western nation. I'm going to say that again. China is a non-white, non-Western nation. And from the view of Britain and the United States, this is absolutely unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. And how dare they move outside of the reins of our control? Because remember, we have an example of what America does to allies and trade partners in Japan. If you remember, some of you may not have been born at the time, but in the 80s, the Japanese were everywhere. I mean, they were building everything. All of the electronics, everything was coming from Japan. The Japanese economy was rolling, right? This is a U.S. ally, right? And when America thought that Japan's economy was reaching a stage where it could threaten the U.S. economy, which means that there was a possibility that with economic power, the Japanese could then remove America's colonial stay on Japan and say, go back home. Now we have the economic and the military muscle to offset you, so we don't have to be your servant, so you go back to America. So what they did, they sabotaged the Japanese economy. Go read books on this. This is one of their main partners, right? They sabotaged the Japanese economy to destroy the Japanese economy, weaken it, so that America could come in and be the bailout person and to tighten her grip around her colony. That's what she did. She thought she could manage China's rise. She thought so. But in reality, the Chinese had different plans. And they bided their time. Remember, America did a lot to China. Remember when they bombed the Chinese embassy? Remember that? Which was a declaration of war, I want you all to know. You know that, right? NATO, under the United States and NATO bombed the Chinese embassy. Yeah, I know you guys remember that, right? Which is a declaration of war. So they wanted to put China back in its place. And the Chinese bit their tongue, bit their lips, sat down on this embarrassment, and stayed working on their plan for economic independence, and slowly built up their military prowess. Because I don't care how strong you are economically, if you don't have the military means to rebuff America, you can cancel it all, buddy. You can cancel it because America will come after you. Think about it. America knows that Russia has a more potent military, right? Right now. She's learned that. She already knew that the Russians had the largest and most powerful nuclear weapons. Did that stop her from her provocative acts against Russia? And Russia is a nuclear juggernaut. So what do you think would have happened to other nations? We have another example. Libya. Libya built up its economic might, and America destroyed it because it did not have the military wherewithal to rebuff any aggression, to make the aggression of the West be so detrimental to her that she would refuse to engage in a military escapade in Libya. With promises of being integrated into the Western economy, Saif al-Islam, Gaddafi, talked his father into demilitarization of Libya and to let inspectors in and to get rid of this chemical and this nuclear weapons program. And after that was verifiable, listen to me good, it didn't happen prior to, it didn't happen during, it happened after. It was verifiable that Libya no longer had the capability to constitute nuclear weapons. Then America, Great Britain, and NATO didn't want to talk to her. They come up with all kinds of demands and restrictions on the Libyan government, and saying what the Libyan government couldn't do in Libya and must do. And when the Libyan government, and all of these was tripwires to set off a war. And when the Libyan government said, hey, listen, we're responsible for Libya. We can't disarm. We cannot stop these terrorists that you've armed. We can't just let them run roughshod in Libya. That was the tripwire for NATO and the United States to go in there and bomb Libya and destroy Libya and place a central bank in Libya. This is what they did. They had plans for Syria. Libya didn't have a central bank. Iraq did not have a bank that was under the control of the West, and Syria didn't have one. Look at those nations. Look at them. Look at them right now. And that lets you know you must build up your political and military wherewithal along with your economic power. Okay, I'm looking in the chat. My chat is moving a little bit slow. Holly Horn, she remembers what I'm saying. She says yes. In Yugoslavia, right? They bombed because, and then they used this excuse. First, they said they did it because they got intelligence that the Chinese embassy was passing intelligence onto the the Yugoslavian military and the Yugoslavian government. And then when that would not fly, they changed it and said they mistakenly hit the building. I remember all that. That was an act of war. Think about this. See, I try to show you the size and how to look at it, how you're supposed to see these things and not look at it one way. Think about if the Chinese were to hit the U.S. embassy in the Philippines, or the U.S. embassy in Australia or New Zealand. What would America's reaction be? And what would she say? Under international law, she has a right to do it, to attack, to declare war, because that was a declaration of war, because embassies are considered sovereign territory of the nations that they represent. That's true. So we're reading between the lines, right? This is a heavy news day. I'm thanking each and every one of you for joining me. I'm thanking each and every one of you all for giving me your time. I really appreciate it. Now, let us go to something. I want you to listen to this.
Well, for the first time since the Cold War, the U.S. military is reportedly planning to deploy longer-range ground-based missiles in the Indo-Pacific region. An American army official cited by Japanese media says that the move is aimed at deterring China. Now, it was not specified where the missiles would be located. The Pentagon has numerous bases in the region, including in Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines and Guam, all within firing range of the Chinese mainland. The U.S. claims that its intermediate-range missiles are designed to counter similar weapons developed by Beijing in recent years. Among the American arms mentioned by that U.S. official is the Tomahawk cruise missile. Now, it's capable of carrying nuclear warheads and can hit targets thousands of kilometers away. Another missile system, that's the SM-6, is also expected to be deployed there. It's designed as an anti-aircraft weapon, but can also be used to hit ground and naval targets, albeit with a much shorter range than those Tomahawks. The vice chair of the Shanghai Center for RIMPAC and International Studies, Nelson Wong, believes that Washington's actions prove it has no intention of taking into account the interests of other nations.
This actually shows that the U.S. is still considering itself to be the world policeman, that they still believe that they control the whole world. They have the right to do whatever they like, even outside of China's borderline. They consider to deploy nuclear weapons. I think perception is now something that is really something that needs to be changed in the U.S., particularly in this multipolar world, because the world is no longer what it was before, and I think it's something that the U.S. leadership and their politicians need to really understand what's going on in the world today and going forward. So it's still a matter of perception.
So I don't know what's going on here. They're messing with, now this is not the connection. This is StreamYard and YouTube that are messing with my side. So I just want to let you all know that. So if there's a delay, it's not the internet thing, it's them now. My dashboard was acting all up during the playing of this video. But this video goes along with something else. I want to bring something to your mind. Where is it? Did I upload it? I tried to upload it. But I have, and I think I'm gonna play it on the next show. I don't think I'm gonna play it on this show. But I had General King talking about the threat. You know, he's never seen the threat he doesn't like. Think about China a threat, Iran a threat. Let's escalate. Let's do this because they would never want to go to war with the United States and all of this. Man, they are living in dreamland. These people are detached from reality. They still think about America in the way that she was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. They're not looking at her now. Look at the situation. Russia has destroyed 3 NATO-trained and fully equipped armed forces in Ukraine, about to destroy the 4th one. Most people don't mention that or talk about that either. Ukraine was the 2nd most powerful, even though it wasn't technically a NATO nation, but it was trained and armed to NATO specification, and it was considered the most powerful army in Europe. And Russia has destroyed it 3 times, and we're into the 4th phase. 3, and we're into 4. And Keane is talking about escalate with everybody. And yet America continues to be saddled by unbridled debt. Do you guys sometimes say, hey, are these people lunatics? Because they gotta be. They have to be. Let me see. Let's see something's going on over here in the chat. Hold on, everybody. I told you they're messing with this. Here we go. Now I got it all. It says, I see Ascended Awakening is in the building. Shout out. All right, shout out and thank you, Ascended Awakening. But we're looking at all of this stuff, and we're talking about China. So I'm gonna bring something else up to you in just a second. Let me end this. Stop screen. Give me a second. Where is it at? Give me a second, everybody. I'm doing this with the internet messing up and with them trying to to beat me down on YouTube and stream you up, but we're still getting it. And thank each and every one of you for your time, even if it's 1 minute. Also, would you please hit the like button? And would you consider subscribing to the channel? We can agree to disagree. This is a platform where you don't have to take my opinion or you don't have to accept what I'm saying, but I'm going to present facts. We can have intelligent, adult-like discourse without being disagreeable, because that's what's needed now. Because you're getting censored. Any alternative opinion, any alternative news is completely censored by all of these platforms and all of the mainstream media. I see MZ is in the building. So let me pull up something for you. Oh, it's on this one right here. So give me a second. I'm trying to maneuver everybody. I'm going to bring something up to you. Hopefully that's it. And I want you to look at this. Remember, we were just talking about China, and we're just talking about America and how she continues to provoke and antagonize. And on top of that, she is really mad because China has publicly taken a stand and has not minced words about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and how it has been an injustice to the Palestinians for decades that they were robbed of their home and then not allowed to return, and any resistance is called terrorism when the occupiers continue to with their brutal policies against them. The Chinese have spoken about this, and this enraged the U.S. government also. But I want you to listen to something. Let me pull this up and see if we can get this going real quick.
You did it.
Hold on one second.
You secured a spot on Main Street. Now all that's left is
all right, here we are.
Would be outraged. Yet to react, they are reacting. And this reaction of China and Russia joining forces, China watched. Part of the impetus for this was what the West was trying to do to Russia in the wake of the start of the special military operation. China was watching that, and they realized, you know what? These cats are coming for me next. Once they get done with Russia, they're coming for me. So I better go back up Russia and we'll work together. And that's exactly what's happening. And this nonsense is coming out of Western media reports that, intelligence officials believe China is going to supply weapons to Russia. Russia doesn't need their weapons. Right. Russia produces plenty on its own. What China needs are the hypersonic missiles that are proven. China has developed at least one hypersonic missile, but it hasn't been tested in combat. It hasn't actually been used to blow stuff up. Russia has 3 varieties, and those are available now to China. China is going to get access to them, and with those, China will be a fortress that America cannot penetrate. Those missiles will take out our aircraft carriers, and our fleet of naval ships have no defense against the hypersonic missiles. So that's another sort of behind-the-scenes agreement, I'm sure, has taken place between China and Russia.
Before we go to Sudan, see, you bring up so many points, so many good points. Isn't that if this is the case and they continue to sanction and push Russia and China together, and we're looking at America trying to pivot to Asia to try to confront China, isn't it suicidal? And shouldn't the leadership be removed for insane policies that can endanger the lives of tens of thousands of U.S. sailors, airmen, Marine, and Army troops?
Well, without divulging the source, I am friends with someone who friends with someone indirectly who's one of the commanders in Indo-PACOM. He is not the top guy. And I know that he has expressed grave concern about the commander of Indo-PACOM trying to get us into a war. And you have subordinates under him trying to stop him. So it is, it's a very dangerous time, and the misinformation that's out there. I did a conversation the other day with a fellow named Jason Goodman. He does a show called Crowdsourcing the Truth, and Jason is a well-read guy. I mean, he was a filmmaker, and he's done a lot. So he's not like he's just been pulled out of the wilds of the Northwest and where he was living in a cave. And when I started explaining the one China policy that Richard Nixon agreed to back in 1972, Nixon said, okay, yes, the United States accepts China as it was one entity, and that Taiwan is a province of China. Therefore, Taiwan is a part of China. That's been U.S. policy up until last year. We're now the Biden administration, with the backing of members of Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, are rejecting that. We're trying to treat Taiwan as an independent country, as one that has no connection whatsoever to China. Well, I keep using this analogy, but I think it's appropriate. Taiwan is to China as Hawaii is to the United States. In other words, Taiwan is a province of China. Province is another word for state. Hawaii is the state of the United States. It's not connected to us. The mainland is it's a 4-hour flight, I guess, from Los Angeles. But if China started interfering in Hawaii, and China tried to establish unilateral military relations with the National Guard of Hawaii, do you think we'd be concerned? Of course. We'd be outraged. Yet we think we can go do that same thing to China, and that they're supposed to just, bend over and take it? No, that's not how this works. And so part of what's driving that is I would just say the ignorance of the American public at large. Because when I brought this up to Jason, he was what? He did not know. He had been fooled by the propaganda that has been dumped on the American people for many years, trying to paint a picture of Taiwan as an independent state, something completely separate from us. And so that ignorance is dangerous.
So, again, do you see the desperation of the empire? This is why all of this talk about China being aggressive with Taiwan, and what will America do if China takes Taiwan? I've been saying this for the longest. Your stated policy is that Taiwan is an integral part of China. So how is China invading China? Huh? How is that? When you look at this, what they're trying to do is build up a narrative to justify America's provocation with China, so that they can take America to war with China to try to see if they can beat China militarily. That's what's going on. They want to see if they can beat it. Not that they can. They want to see. Oh, man, I'm telling you. This is something. Let me remove this from the screen real quick. This is something to think about, isn't it? All the while, they're talking about freedom of navigation, national security, U.S. interests. Now, think about this. The U.S. says China is infringing upon its interests in Asia. Yeah, let's say that again. The U.S. says that China is infringing upon U.S. interests in Asia. They are saying this, and nobody is saying, well, hey, isn't China an Asian nation? What about their interests in their own neighborhood, on their own block, with their own Asian brothers and sisters. So you're telling me that America's declared interests supersedes those of a nation that is right in the midst of Asian nations? How is that even logical? King says, man, I wish I could pull it up on my computer for you, but King says, General King talks about how the U.S. has interests in the Middle East and how Iran and its proxies are attacking America's interests now. And when he said that, I sat there and I was like, really? So I rewind the video a couple of times, and I was shaking my head. I was like, these people say that with a straight face. The media takes it hook, line, and sinker, puts it out to the people, no rebuttals, no nothing. And then this becomes the narrative. And nobody takes the time out to stop and say, hey, why is it that you declare these people in Iraq as proxies of Iran? Why isn't Britain a U.S. proxy or vice versa? Why aren't the European nations, which comprise NATO, why aren't they labeled as your proxies? Because you flood them with weapons, you give them military directives, political directives, economic directives. Why aren't they considered proxies? Why must you say that people in Iraq are Iranian proxies, people in Lebanon are Iranian proxies, when you have Israel occupying the Golan Heights, when you have America occupying a third of Syria, when you have America illegally staying at military bases across Iraq, when you have America, Great Britain, and Israel illegally occupying the resource-rich areas of Yemen and one of the strategic islands off the coast of Yemen. Why must these nations, these people who are rebelling against your occupation and your planned hegemony, be Iranian proxies? Why can't they be outraged and fed up citizens of that nation that want you gone? Why? Why is it that if people in America would not allow a foreign entity to come and occupy, they're called patriots? But Syrians, people in Mali, people in the Democratic Republic of Congo, people in Cote d'Ivoire, or people in Niger, or Russia, or in Asia, or anywhere around the world that are fighting, why aren't they called patriots? Why do you label them insurgents and terrorists? Now, you come 5,000, 10,000 miles away from your land and demand that these people, these nations conform to your government. You're thinking of government. You're thinking of culture. You're thinking of economics. You're thinking of politics. And then you set up military bases there, economic institutions there to try to control the levels of power, to destabilize at will, right? So that you can have influence. That is not an act of terrorism because it's done by the West. But when the people, the grassroots people, get fed up and say, you know what? I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees in subjugation to imperialism. That's terrorism, right? That's terrorism. They haven't come to America. They haven't come to Great Britain. But they are the terrorists and the insurgents, and they are originally from those lands. Man, how in the heck can you even get this over on the people like that? Common sense won't let a person that has average common sense even accept some logic like that. That you come 10,000 miles away from your shores, you're occupying bases in those people's lands. And when they attack you, because first they ask you to go, you refuse, you come up with every kind of reason to stay there. And when they defend their homeland, their people, and their way of life, they are insurgents and terrorists. Man, oh man, I'm telling you, it is unreal And people in America and in the West continue to be dumbed down mentally through the propaganda organs that are mainstream, and a lot have been compromised in the alternative media. You understand? We've got to look with a fresh perspective. And what I tell people is let loose your prejudice for a minute. Forget your color, your gender, forget your nationality, forget all of that for a minute, and look at things without all of those burdens on you. And when you look at things and say, hey, would I allow that? Would I like that? Would I put up with that? And you can get a more honest answer instead of letting you be dog-fed with this dogma and this propaganda that continues to be poured into the ears and into the minds and into the hearts of the people here in the Western world. It's crazy. It's crazy. Oh man, let me look at the chat for a minute. Do you not see what's going on? And I'm telling you, it is a very bad time for the Western world to try to put that mess over on the world because of the age of technology. The age of technology. It allows us to receive information quickly. It allows us to be able to process more information than we've ever been able to process before. So it puts us on a better footing if you will be morally and ethically guided. It empowers you more that you don't fall victim to the propaganda and the innuendo of the Western mouthpieces, which is the media and some of the alternative media. You understand what I'm saying? Holly says he's telling it. I'm just trying to lay out the facts for the people. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give you not just my perspective. I'm trying to give you facts so that you can do with them what you will. And if they empower you, then that's great. And if you want to throw them out the window, then that's great too. I've done what I'm supposed to do. But I want to get this to your ears so that you have the wherewithal to make your own educated and enlightened decision on matters instead of being spoon-fed the dogma that continues to come out of these media outlets. Oh man, I'm telling you, it is. Let me pull up some. I'm gonna see if I can pull up something for you guys. Let me see. Give me a second while I look for this. I see that one. Give me 1 second. Because I'm pulling this up while we're talking. I want you to just pay attention to all of the stuff that is going on. Because your lives are at stake. Remember, America is not no Rudy Poo nation. America has thousands of nuclear weapons in her arsenal. She has even though some of her weapons are not working up to standard, she has a powerful military. She is something to be reckoned with and not to be played with. And it is best you know how to deal with it. You know, some people, they don't like my stilo. They don't like my demeanor because I'm a straight shooter. You know, a lot of people, when you've dealt with fake people and when you've dealt with shiesty people, or you've dealt with people that are scared to speak for themselves or the go along and get along game, when you've been conditioned with those type of people, when a person is straight up with you and they don't mix words, some people take that as being brash or arrogant or just mean. But it's not that. It's just that let's get straight to the point. Let's stop dancing around all the issues and get to the point. Let's address what is vital for your livelihoods and your security instead of all of this other foolishness that they put on top of that. You know? Man, I hope you guys are understanding where I'm coming from. I hope you are. Let me see if I can find this clip real quick for you while we're talking. I may not be able to find it because the computers are acting up. But this is about Scott Ritter. I was interviewing him. I got so many clips of them. But it's one clip in particular that I want you to hear. Mm. Mm. Listen to this clip here. Let me first go and bring it up on the screen. This is not the clip I was looking for, but the title in itself says we need to look at this. All right. So give me a second. Bring it up. I want you to look at this, buddy. Roll. It's up on the screen. All right. Now, I'm getting ready to play this. Okay. It may be a commercial, so deal with it real quick.
For NATO, and
let me start
on top of that
from the beginning. Here we are.
Nothing. We are the worst friends in the world. If you're a friend of America, it's guaranteed you're going to suffer. Your men are going to die.
Well, if this is the case, then what ramifications does that have for NATO? And on top of that, couldn't America be charged with genocide for initiating and continuing to propagate and push this war on the Ukrainian people?
I mean, couldn't America? No. Should America? Yes. It comes down to court, a matter of jurisdiction. There's no court in the world that can charge America. America can only be charged in the court of public opinion. And here's the important part, ladies and gentlemen. We are the court. We sit in judgment of our government. What are we doing about it? I firmly believe that silence is consent. So if the average American's sitting there going, yeah, okay, war, that's pretty bad, but I'm just going to go on. I'm going to, go live my life, go watch a movie, go eat a dinner, go, play with my dogs. It's stuff I do. I'm not making fun of people. I do this. Then silence is consent. We are consenting to the actions of the American government, what they're doing in our collective name. But we are the only court that can sit in judgment of the American government. There is no court of jurisdiction around the world that can do this. And who is going to do this? The Europeans? I mean, if you want to talk about a colonial relationship, we are the colonial masters to our little European colonies. They can't do anything unless we say that. They're the perfect little trained poodles. Jump, sit, fetch, roll over, play dead. I mean, that's what we do to our European allies, our friends. We're not friends of anybody. We're the worst friends in the world. We only bring suffering to them. But should America be judged? Yes, yes. And that, again, I just reiterate, we are the judge. We, the people of the United States of America, we are the judge, jury, and executioners. And we get to take every single one of these people who are doing things in our name and hold them accountable on election day. It's just a matter of what our priorities are. Do we really care about genocide and mass murder and all that? I'm telling you, on election day, the answer is no. What we care about is what's in our pocket. What we care about is the paycheck. But that means we become a consumer society, and we are all captured by the allure of the almighty dollar. And we stand for nothing except, the furtherance of policies that make us comfortable. And we're all guilty of that. I'm as guilty of that as everybody else. I live in a glass house. So I don't, I'm throwing stones, but I understand that my house is going down too. We are all guilty of the same thing. Some of us go through the motions more. I go through the motions. I write, I speak, etc. Is there more I can do? I'm trying. But it's tough to do things by yourself. This is why you need a movement. Imagine Martin Luther King trying to do the civil rights movement by himself. He wouldn't have gotten very far. He was a powerful voice, but what made him even more powerful is the mass of people, the movement that joined him, that was able to bring about the changes. Imagine trying to bring the Vietnam War to a close, the anti-war movement. Individuals by themselves, nothing, but a movement together. We need a movement today to bring an end to this madness. But America is so divided today between Republican and Democrat, between black and white. I mean, we aren't the single nation that we need to be to have this kind of movement. And anytime somebody tries to create a movement, that movement collapses in the weight of its own internal prejudice.
So you hear that? He said we stand for nothing. This is what Scott said. All right. And I'm telling you, you've got to empower yourself. People are lazy nowadays. I'm telling you, people are super lazy. They don't want to do anything that has some degree of pain or sacrifice to it. They want everything right now. And think about when we look at America, she goes around and she takes what she wants. That is a symptom of society today. You can work hard and someone will see you. They can be lazy or they can be just jealous, and they'll come and snuff out your life for something that you earned. And I keep telling you that her domestic policies, they mirror her foreign policies. To go into someone's house and kill people while they're asleep, or to go into somebody's house and rob them at gunpoint, terrorize them, right? Pistol whip them. It's what goes on around the country every day. There's been multiple mass shootings across America. It seems like at least one a day. And then when we pivot and look to her foreign policy, we can see it being mirrored back in her domestic policies. Do you understand? So this is nothing good for the empire. And she continues on this path of decline, no matter what you say or what you do. And when you speak up for the truth, you become an enemy to those who are an enemy to the truth. You do. I'm still looking for the little clip that I wanted to play. I'm still looking for it. I might have to just download it and play it on the next show or whatever like this. But let me get this off the screen real quick. All right, there we are. All right. So listen, I think I've held your attention long enough. And let me go to this, to the comments real quick. Oh, Holly, yes. On time. Boom. Right on time. Holly says, Texas and Nevada just today. This is what I'm saying. Mass shootings. There's no respect of the sanctity of life. There's no respect. We covet property over life. Do you know that? That's why the laws are like that. There's no respect of life. Listen, you can always get another watch. You can always get another pair of shoes. You can always get more glasses or a car. But once that life is snubbed out, you can never bring that life back. We treat life like a movie where you just go in. And this is a problem with American society. Since we're on this subject, y'all let me talk to you for a minute. I was about to close the show out, but Holly hit some. She hit a point. Okay? Look at society. I remember growing up, and there was little to no cursing on television, period. And I remember the husband and wife oftentimes would be shown in separate beds, like My Three Sons and I Love Lucy and all that stuff like that. I remember all of that. All right. And they would be shown in different beds. And as time progressed, and you get something like HBO comes around, right? And HBO started having a little adult content like PG, R-rated stuff, and a little over that. But it was after hours, okay? It was after hours. So I'm gonna highlight you, Thanatar. I like that comment. I read part of your comment just now. I got to finish reading it though. But what I'm getting to something: the degradation and the decline of morals and ethics in America, and it's everybody else's fault. That's what the government says. So they desensitize you to the sex part on TV. They show movies with children always bucking up against the parents. They show shoot 'em up movies that are now more gory and more full of death than anything, right? They show the robbing movies and they have it in the music constantly. Do you not understand? I'm talking to the people who can affect change. Do you not understand that you are what you eat mentally as well as physically? if that is what you're eating on a daily basis, especially when you have been robbed of opportunities. And then you start being depressed because you see no way out of your community or no way out of the situation that you're in. When you were a kid, you had dreams that you would be this and you would be that and you would be that. But the situation has changed, your environment has changed, and you have been chained to that environment. And then you have become desensitized of sex, violence, and respect of people. And then violence becomes the norm because the communities, it's not just the Black communities, but all communities are being flooded now with violence, with guns, with drugs, right? Do you know the toll that it takes on not just that community, but the entire society and the amount of money that is spent? Do you know that you're preparing generation after generation through these environmental changes that are detrimental to the people in those communities? But do you know that you're conditioning them to hate their country? Do you know that now they're watching America and they're watching the movies and they're listening to the music, and the music say shoot 'em up, bang bang, or the movies Arnold Schwarzenegger, see, because I don't listen to rap music too much. I listen to some a little bit, but it's the old stuff, like Poor Righteous Teachers and the stuff that came out in the 80s and stuff like that, 90s. And a little bit today, a little bit. But I like easy listening, and I like some R&B and some. That's what I like, jazz, and I like a little light rock and stuff like that. But do you know they blame it on rap music, and they say that's the violence in it. But the rappers don't control the distribution. The rappers don't control the promotions and the venues for which these records are played and listened to. Those are people above their pay grade that control that. Now, we see them blame, but they don't blame Arnold Schwarzenegger in his movies when he comes in with a machine gun and gun down everybody. We don't blame these other people that are thought to be heroes as they go in these movies. But what I'm saying to you is they are desensitizing you to violence. And that makes violence easier to be accepted in the society. And that's why people are now using violence almost second nature, and then think about the ramifications after, because they've been desensitized. That is a sign of a declining nation, a declining republic, and a declining power. And when they see America go around the world doing what she's doing, militarily, violence, guns, right? Taking what other people have and then justifying it without ramifications, it becomes a justification in their minds at home. I can do the same thing. I see that guy standing over there with those new Jordans on. Or I see that woman walking, she just came out the store. When she comes out that other store, she has a purse. I'm going to run up to her and snatch it. And if she says something, I'm going to shoot her. Or I'm going to beat her down or something. That is because that is what is pervasive in society now. Society is mimicking the government. And the government is mimicking society. So now you have a decline in ethics and morality in the society, and you had them in the government. This does not bode well for the future progression of any republic or nation. You understand? So Thanatar 13 says, this culture of theft and murder first against natives, against enslaved blacks, and then blacks living under Jim Crow, neo-slavery, etc., against minorities is inherent to settler colonial culture. And now check this out. And check this out. I often say this. It now has no limits. It is attacking everybody now. This unethical society now, it is attacking everybody, and everybody's to blame. Everybody but the people who are at the top. Listen, the people at the top benefit from this. I'm telling you, the society is declining so bad. Check this out. The FBI, I was looking at an article of, what was it, a few days ago. I believe it was a few days ago or last week or whatever. And the FBI, it was 2 FBI agents. And they were going to their car. They were carjacked in Washington, D.C., right down the street from the Capitol buildings. Carjacked at gunpoint. 2 FBI agents. I'm not lying. Go, if everybody is in the chat and you Google what I'm saying. They were carjacked. It shows you there's no respect for authority. There's no respect for life. There's no respect for property. There's no respect for God. It is a do as you feel and as you wish society, and to hell with everybody else. Let me pay for all of this when I pay for it. That's what they do. I'm going to party like it's 1999 or until the wheels fall off. That's America. That's the Western world. That's what's going on. This is why you often hear me say we're living in a civilizational change. It's a universal change. And there's another world being built. And what's happening is, according to science, that science dictates that 2 objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time. And what you see is a world that was dominated by the West and America specifically, and the UK specifically, is now colliding with a world that has different thoughts. And this world that has different thoughts is moving towards a more just, more freer avenue without being dictated to and controlled by those in the old world. Therefore, when you have something new happening and the old is passing away, the old fights like hell to maintain their life, their livelihood. This is why we're having the wars. This is why the economic sanctions don't make sense. This is why the political crisis continue to expand and grow across the world. Because America is fighting for her life as an empire. The British are fighting for their life as part of the empire. The Western world is fighting for their survival. That's what they're doing. And they cannot fathom or even accept an idea of a fairer world because they won't be the beneficiaries of it, or they won't be the leaders of it, or they won't control it. Something outside of their control, they will not allow. That's why war is inevitable. War is inevitable. Because you have this polar power saying this. We know what this polar power is about because they're proving it to us on a daily basis. That if I can't get what I want, if you do not bow to my dictates, I'm going to demonize you, sanction you, lie on you, destabilize you, and eventually wage war on you. So war is inevitable. People don't want to look at it like that, but I'm a straight shooter. That's the way it is. And what you see in the Middle East, you ain't seen nothing yet, baby. Things are going to, I'm telling you, the next year or so, we're going to see a lot of conflict. We're going to see a lot of death and destruction because you have one world merging in on another world. And as one world goes out, those who are the pillars of that world will fight like hell to maintain their kingdom. They will fight like hell to maintain because they benefited from it. While a new world is being established right in front of us. Yeah, but it says, IMO Western culture has always been like this. It's just that for a period after World War II till now, there was enough sheer wealth to make it seem otherwise for a while. Thanatar, that's a good point you make, but listen to this. More than the wealth, it was illusion. The magicians, I call them the money magicians, the political magicians, what they were doing were the sleight of hands. Okay, that's what went on, the sleight of hands. I can make people believe that I'm still wealthy. And then as I'm doing that, I'm going to position my troops all across the world, across all of the vital land routes, all of the vital air trafficking routes, all of the vital water routes, so that if anybody challenges what I'm saying, I can hold their economies hostage to the barrel of the gun. And I can sanction them and overthrow them if they challenge. Look at all of the people who have been overthrown. Even their minions, former minions, Saddam Hussein. Why did they really go in there and kill him? It's because after a while, he changed the oil sales from dollars to euros. And he was also accepting other currencies. And the minute America went into Iraq and they secured the gold, what gold was left, and they secured the oil fields, the first thing they did was change back, even though it cost Iraq billions of dollars. They changed back the oil sales from euros to dollars. If you think I'm lying, go look it up. Go look it up. Look what they did to Libya. Look what they're doing in Yemen. Look what they're doing in Niger. Look what they're doing everywhere. Look what they've done to Ukraine. Look what they did to Yugoslavia. If I can't rule, if you refuse to bow to my dictates, I'm going to kill you. And so the dollar has been the life's blood of the empire, which means that the European Union and the British, they were getting blood infusions from the US because it kept their economies afloat. So they have a vested interest in keeping the dollar afloat. That's why on every military and economic escapade, you see the UK and you see NATO. Everyone, because they have a vested interest in keeping the dollar the number one currency, and they're willing to fight for it. But these money magicians, they started losing steam in the 60s that I told you about when they used up the silver. And then they really started losing steam when Nixon was forced to take the world off the gold and silver standard. But later on in the late 80s, early 90s, I believe it was the late 80s, I think it was the early 90s, the United States and Great Britain came up with a Ponzi scheme, an even bigger Ponzi scheme, and they've wiped the internet almost clean with this. But they were renting out gold shipments. You know what I mean? They were leasing gold to other people, and this is why they kept robbing the other nations. They would take their gold, they would keep it in their vaults, and they would lease it out as payments, right? And so when the gold, as China got stronger and then other nations started buying gold and started setting up their gold reserves, what happened was the gold started becoming scarce. And what the United States and Britain did, they started using tungsten, which is a metal that has the same density and pretty much similar makeup of gold. And they would gold plate the tungsten, and they would ship, because banks to banks they settled debt in gold and silver, and they would be shipping containers full of tungsten plated with gold. And one day somebody got suspicious because the markings didn't match of the markings when they sent their gold there. And so they took a drill and started drilling through, and they took a test, and about a half-inch in is where the gold stopped. I believe it was a half-inch, because a couple centimeters in, the gold stopped, and the rest was tungsten. And so the people started, America and Britain started whispering that this was the Chinese doing this to put pressure on the Chinese. But then all of the, when nations started researching and started checking this, they found out that a lot of the gold settlement was done in tungsten, cladded with gold. And so the numbers weren't matching what they said the Chinese did. So everybody started pointing the finger to the UK and the US. And the media killed those stories. If you are a good sleuth, a good detective, go do your research and you'll see. You can either condemn me or vindicate me on what I'm saying to you. So they had to keep this under wraps. And why do you think that the Chinese as they started rising, they started setting up all of these other exchanges, the gold exchanges, right? The Shanghai Gold Exchange. And when they got back Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Gold Exchange, the Chinese commodity bourse, the Russian bourse that trades commodities and oils. Why do you think all this stuff was happening? Because they wanted to get from under the thumb of the West. Because remember, for a long time, all of the gold or most of the gold was being held in France, Great Britain, and the US. These people were manipulating the gold to hold on to power and to continue with this charade that has been going on for centuries or for at least 100 years. And now China has gold reserves upwards of between, some say 30, some say 40, and now I've heard even two people say upwards of 60,000 tons of gold. And I believe, now this is my personal opinion, I believe China has this gold, and they don't just have gold reserves. They have silver reserves. They have copper reserves. They have all of these commodity reserves. And I believe that they know that once the dollar starts tanking and they started cashing out, and it's a stampede, the United States would put a hold on the repatriation of the dollars. They'll stop it, or try to stop it, and try to sanction and try to what they call confiscation of wealth, right? And the Chinese bought gold and commodities, I believe, to offset some of the losses that they may incur when the dollar declines, so that America can't hold that 1.2 or 1.6 trillion dollars hostage, because we've seen what they've done with Russia. So this whole Ponzi scheme is starting to collapse right in front of us. And it's by the grace of God that we are living in the moment and that we see these things taking place. It is a very beautiful time to be awake to the reality of the change of worlds. One world going in and the other one going out. Listen, I've had your attention long enough. Thank you all for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on the web and on God's green earth. This has been a message from Mrs. Barbara's baby boy. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you all for joining me. We out of here.